Well, enough I have it as one past the hour here. We have 12 people so far. I'm wondering because we actually had 70 people register, which is fantastic. And I'm wondering because I think we'd like to do introductions. That sounds right to you. Do you want to get started with those?
Yes, indeed. I think we should get started because I have quite a number of slides to get through. So, as people join, I'm sure they'll be able to catch up. So let's start with introductions. Yes, I'm Lalanath De Silva. I work at the World Resources Institute as the head of the Environmental Democracy Practice. I've been associated with Eye on the Earth since its inception in 2011 and have at the beginning being the chairperson of the Access to Information as it was then called Signature Initiative, and subsequently now together with Jesse have become the focal area coordinators for the Access to Information focal area. Who would like to go next?
Sure. Well,
Anybody?
I go. Why don't since I introduced myself already, why don't we start at the top of the list? Ahmed, would you like to go? And you can here. Let me unmute you and go ahead, Ahmed.
You want me to introduce myself, or what
Please,
about it?
please do. Just give a brief introduction. Where you're from, if you're representing any organization, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Ahmad Madawi. I am a pesticide toxicologist, and I'm from the University of Tehran, retired professor, and I'm following Eye on Earth always. Thank you.
Um, okay, you're waiting for me to introduce myself, I guess, by the fact it told me I'm unmuted. I'm Alice Hughes. I'm an associate professor for the Chinese Academy of Sciences in Xishuangbanna, which is a relatively remote part of China, and a board member for the Association of Tropical Biology and Conservation, the Society for Conservation Biology, the Society for Tropical Ecology, and the International Network of Next Generation Ecologists. And my work focuses on understanding biodiversity patterns and drivers of biodiversity change across Southeast Asia, with an aim to informing more appropriate conservation.
Who's next?
I'm sorry.
We can't see the list, so
I'm
if you want to just call for people.
Sure, I'm sorry. I was speaking and I was muted. And a little ironically, because I was saying as I go down the list, I'm unmuting everyone. And then once I do that, you can actually control your microphone. The button is just below the red box with the arrow at the top left. So when you're not speaking, if you could just mute yourself so we could limit background noise, that would be great. Thank you. Bob, go ahead. Thanks.
This is Bob Samwars from the Group on Earth Observations, representing the Eye on Earth Alliance partners, which includes WRI, GEO, UNEP, AGETI, and IUCN. And GEO is the chair of the alliance this year, and we're very excited that this phone call is happening and look forward to what comes out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Good morning. Hi, Carl.
I'm here.
Hi, Carl. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, this is Carl Nettleton from Open Ocean Global and Nettleton Strategies.
Welcome, Carl. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Daniel?
Hello, everybody. I'm Daniel Barragan. I'm from Ecuador, and I work for the International Research Center on Environment and Territory at the University of Los Hemisferios.
Welcome, Daniel. Thank you for joining. Have Fatia? Oh, we may have lost Fatia. Oh no, Fatia Kadura, can you hear me? Okay, we'll come back. We'll circle back. Haldor Johansson, would you like to introduce yourself? Okay. Again, we'll circle back as folks work out their microphone issues. Elena Rodriguez Yates, go ahead, please.
Okay, sorry.
Hi, Elena, are you there?
Alto is here now. Sorry if you hear me.
Okay, so folks, I'm just gonna, I know people are trickling in. As I unmute everyone, if you can take control of your microphone and if you could just mute it when you're not speaking. Again, the microphone is at the top left. It's a green box. Haldor, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for being slow in connecting. Yeah, my name is Haldor Johansson. I'm director of the Arctic Portal. I'm based in Iceland. We are information gateway to Arctic information and data. We are partners in quite many projects of relevance, including now a new project on climate predictions through the Horizon 2020, where we lead all the outreach and stakeholder engagement. I have the pleasure of sitting on quite many boards of relevance too. I sit on the European Polar Board, SEION, and the Arctic Data Committee, and I did attend the conference in Abu Dhabi in October.
Terrific. Thank you for joining today. We have John Knowles. Hi, John. Go right ahead if you'd like to introduce yourself.
John Knowles with the Nature Conservancy Caribbean Program.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining, John. Luc Slervaux. Hi, Luc. Are you there? Can you hear me? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Luke, I've unmuted you, so you can control your mic. Magda, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. My name is Magda Totnagy. I'm an independent expert at the moment, working mainly with the Regional Environmental Center for Central and Eastern Europe and also others. And I've been involved in the IONOS process from quite the beginning, including the Access for All initiative, and we had one project or program called Building Bridges Between Regions, which is about exchanging experience between the Europe Aarhus Convention stakeholders and the Latin American Caribbean region stakeholders. We are involved with the REC and others in supporting the drafting of the new Principle 10 agreement in the Latin American Caribbean region at the moment, and also I'm working in Europe on different participatory governance, Aarhus, PRTR related projects.
Thank you, Magda. And moving along.
I also should say, sorry, that I probably cannot stay with you until the end.
Okay.
Maybe 1 hour.
That's fine. We understand. Thank you, though, for joining. Mona, go right ahead. Hi, Mona. Hi, Mona Galayini. Okay, we'll circle back. Nadim Ahmad.
Hello.
Hi, Nadim. Go right ahead.
This is Nadim. I work at the Lead Pakistan as a team leader for Sustainable Development Goals. Lead is an Islamabad-based NGO and think tank. We also work as Asia Secretariat for CDKN and working in 5 different countries in the region, including Indonesia, Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India. I hope it's useful.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Nadim. Thanks for joining. Olympia, good morning. Good morning. Hi, Olympia. Go right ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Yes, good morning. This is Olympia Castillo, and my organization is Communication and Environmental Education. I am from Mexico, and I also work for the process in Latin America and the Caribbean for have a regional instrument to support Principle 10. Good morning.
Thank you, Olympia. Pat Cummins, please introduce yourself. Go right ahead.
Yes. Good morning. This is Pat Cummins. I'm with Esri. I'm based in the U.S. I work on strategic initiatives for Esri focused in the government space, and more in the last couple of years very much focused on climate initiatives. Esri's been supporting Eye on Earth probably since the beginning. My first introduction, active involvement, was the Abu Dhabi conference last year. And we're also involved in SDG work and other climate partnerships with the White House here in the U.S.
Thank you, Pat. Hi, good morning or good afternoon. Robert Gurney?
Yes, hello, it's everybody. I'm Robert Gurney. I'm from the University of Reading in the UK, but I'm also the co-chairman of the science board for the Belmont Forum's activity in e-science and data infrastructures, where we are trying, this is about the top 20 environmental science funders in the world, and they all want to make their data openly available to everybody in a common way, and so we are in the process of implementing that. So very pleased to be here.
Terrific. Thank you. Hi, good morning or good afternoon, Simon Wilson. Hi, Simon. Looks like you've muted yourself. If you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, can you hear me? I've just arrived, so
yes.
I'm just catching up a little bit.
Yes, if you could just
okay.
Introduce yourself and where you're, if you're representing an organization and where you're calling from.
Yes, sure. So my name is Simon Wilson. I'm technical director of an environmental consultancy firm called 5 Oceans Environmental Services, based in Muscat. We have been quite involved in Eye on Earth over the years, and are currently, for example, a consultant on a World Bank GCC funded project to look at transboundary issues in the Gulf Basin. We've been operating in Oman for about 15 years, Oman and the Southern Gulf region, so we're quite regionally focused here in the Arabian Gulf.
Thank you, Simon. Sonigitu, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Sonigitu Ekpe. I think you're muted. If you want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Sonigitu Ekpe. I'm from Cross River State, Nigeria. I work with the Department of Forestry, Biodiversity and Conservation. I head a unit on biodiversity and ecotourism. Basically, I'm having a lot of interest on how we can sustainably manage our depleting natural resources and creating alternative livelihood. That's why I'm interested in this webinar.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining. Thank you. Stacy Moultrie.
Hi, my name is Stacy Moultrie. I'm based in the Bahamas. I'm an environmental planner with HD Wells. I'm working on developing a sustainability assessment tool for small island developing states.
Thank you for joining, Stacy. And Teresa. Good morning, Teresa. Do you want to introduce yourself? Okay, well, there's a few folks who have joined since we started. I'm going back up to the top. Alex Descherbanen.
Alex Descherbanen at CSUN Columbia University. We're an information provider, so that's our interest in this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. And Angel Braestrup. Good morning, Angel.
Good morning, everybody. This is Angel Braestrup. I'm in Washington, D.C., and I'm with the Munson Foundation, and I'm here to learn.
Thanks for joining. That's wonderful. I'm coming back around to Elena Rodriguez-Yate. Are you here, Elena?
Listen to me.
Okay, Elena, we're having a lot of background noise. But thank you. Sorry, go ahead. Who's that?
This is Lalanath. In the interests of time, we're now 17 minutes into the session. I think we may want to suspend introductions and maybe we can come back to it at the end.
Okay.
I'm just afraid we'll run out of time.
Okay, go right ahead then, and we will try to bring in folks at the end as well. You can also, just for everyone, you can use the chat feature as well and to introduce yourself as Lana proceeds with the presentation. So go ahead, Lana.
Before I start, I wonder if Bob would like to say a few words of introduction on behalf of the Alliance, the Eye on the Earth Alliance. A couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, Bob. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I know you've done this before.
I'm unmuted now.
Yes, Bob.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So, Lana, thank you both and Jesse for leading this conversation and taking on the responsibility for the Access to Information focal area. For those of you who have not already seen or heard the presentation I gave to the community a few weeks ago, the Eye on Earth has, coming out of the summit last October, has changed a bit of its structure and is reorienting its focus. As I mentioned earlier, I'm representing the Group on Earth Observations, which is now one of the Eye on Earth Alliance partners, along with UNEP and AGETI, who were the original partners in Eye on Earth, and WRI and IUCN are the other partners at this point. We, for a variety of reasons, ranging from infrastructure and financial capabilities, as well as the view that there are some incredible opportunities for the Eye on Earth community to play a significant role in a number of the global conversations going on, we made a determination a while ago to restructure the Eye on Earth operating system, if you will, to broaden the conversation, although at the same time trying to simplify the organizational structure. So there are now 3 focal areas: access to information, data infrastructure, and capacity development. And the intent is that we would love to have the Eye on Earth community identify issues and opportunities where its unique perspective can be folded into, incorporated into global discussions around the SDGs, around biodiversity, around any number of the global environmental and sustainable development conversations that are going on. So we are looking to the community through these focal areas to identify its sort of unique value add and help us identify where that unique perspective should be plugged into these discussions, and the Eye on Earth partners are prepared to use all of its capacities to both highlight, publicize, and create opportunities for Eye on Earth to be direct participants in these various conversations, whether it's at the CBD COP in Mexico in December, or the IUCN World Congress in the fall, or activities around the UN General Assembly in September, and then certainly moving into next year as all of these different kinds of conversations move forward. So we're very excited, as I said earlier, that this group is meeting and convening and beginning its conversation, and we look forward very much to the substantive ideas and concepts and ways forward that come out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you very much. Let me now turn to my slides. I'm thankful to Derek Bidden, who supplied me with a number of these slides, and I've of course adjusted them accordingly for this session. This focal area concentrates on access to information, and I'll get into what that means in a minute. But we have two focal area coordinators, myself and Jesse Worker. Let me see. Okay, I jumped. Okay, so just to remind you and to follow up on what Bob was saying, who we are, our strength consists of, at the top, the Eye on the Earth Alliance, which consists of AJBI, GEO, IUCN, UNEP, and WRI. And then you have the community, which is truly a global distribution, as you can heard from the number of introductions from around the world today. It's multi-sectoral. It's not confined to any sector. The subject matter experts are those who form the community, and our only alignment is to shared beliefs and passions for mission and principles, and committed to objectives, and we're all committed to objectives on informed decision making. That is to say that decisions regarding environment and development should be made in an informed fashion. The vision for the Eye on the Earth, which the Alliance has now put forth, and you see it there, a world where environmental and associated social and economic information combined with citizen engagement improves decisions leading to sustainable development. Very much to do with information and good decision making. The mission of the Eye on the Earth is to build networks and capacity across diverse knowledge communities to improve decision making for sustainable development. And as you can see, there are these three basic communities that Bob was referring to, ours being one of them. Just to remind ourselves, there are 14 principles that were agreed to way back in 2011, and these are the 14 principles. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I do want to highlight those which are in uppercase. So the first one, improve equitable access to information. That's one of the principles that Eye on Earth stands for. Can everyone have access to equitable access, fair access to information? Develop adequate institutional and legislative enabling conditions for further implementation of Rio Principle 10. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Rio Principle 10, but in 1982 in Rio, when the first Earth Summit happened, 182 countries agreed to the Rio Declaration, and in it is Principle 10, which basically says that environmental issues are best handled with access to information, the participation of all stakeholders, and access to relief and remedies, or access to justice, more broadly speaking. So that's Principle 10, and the purpose of this particular focal area is to ensure that we have the institutional and legislative enabling conditions to make sure that decision-making around environment and development can take place transparently, in a participatory way, and in a way that is accountable. Another principle, number 4, that is relevant, make credible, relevant, and timely information more available. 5, keep information management close to the source. 6. Provide effective mechanisms for collection of environmental, economic, and social information and avoid unnecessary duplication. 7. Information supporting reporting obligations and decision making. And 8. Address information gaps from both the demand and supply perspectives. And demand and supply being the supply of information from government and other agencies, and demand being demand for information by scientists, citizens, and others. What are we building on? I mean, we're not starting from scratch here. We are very much building on a past history. JD, or the Environmental Agency of Abu Dhabi, and UNEP had an original collaboration which resulted in the Eye on the Earth Summit in 2011, ISAC Summit. Global community was formed, rallying around mission and principles. There was a declaration, and out of that came special initiatives which were thematic. And there were the thematic special initiatives, and then there were the enabling and foundational special initiatives. The Access for All was what it was called. In Access for All initiative was an enabling and foundational initiative together with 2 others. There were also some seed-funded projects and their deliverable outcomes. In fact, within the Special Initiative for Access for All, there were 3 such projects that were funded, and I'll speak about those in a minute. The second Eye on the Earth Summit took place last year in October, and there we had the launch of the Eye on the Earth Alliance and of leading global actors in the data for sustainability sector. Continuity and progress. The thematic expertise is mission critical. Thematic scope has been expanded. Nothing has gone away. Everything that we have developed so far very much remains. However, the focus is now going to be on being self-directed sub-communities, if you like, thematic, geographic, and these are to be encouraged. So ours would be one of those self-directed communities, and within our community of access to information, we can always form sub-communities around geographic or thematic lines. That's up to us. The Eye on the Earth agenda is a community-driven one. It's not top-down. The Alliance doesn't tell us what to do, but the Alliance does provide us with some very light-touch governance. For example, the Alliance partners would provide coordination and administrative support. They would provide communication and collaboration tools for use by all, and they would provide support, endorsement, and influence, subject to the specifics, of course. So, what's new then? What's new in this, in the formation of the 3 focal areas? And the original special initiatives have now been merged into these 3 focal areas. What's new is that there is now a global agenda which provides an ever greater opportunity for Eye on the Earth to input and influence. For example, we have the SDG process, we have the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, we have the data revolution, we have the Open Government Partnership, which is very special to the Access for All and Access to Information field, etc. So these are all new opportunities that have opened up, and I think we can make use of them in a very productive way. Our focus is on the core values, which is cross-sectoral collaboration for enabling data-informed decision-making, and the focus is on putting access to information, law, policy, practice, and institutions, prerequisites onto the global agenda through Eye on the Earth representation at events, by on-the-record statements by senior stakeholders, and inclusion in outcome statements at global and other important fora. So just remember, when we talk about access to information, we're not just talking about the actual practical access, but in order for that access to be there, you need a background law, perhaps the Freedom of Information Act or Data Act. You need some kind of policy on the side of the government, and then you need practice, which institutions are following. So all of that has access to information. This is a depiction of the Eye on the Earth framework. The engagement domains, for example, you have Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, the natural environment, and the built environment, and we know that access to information runs across all of that. The idea is that you would have data to enable sustainable development decision making. There is also data infrastructure, which is the other focal area, and capacity development. what are the resources at hand for us to do our job, to carry on the work of this focal area? Collective knowledge. Eye on the Earth institutional experience and knowledge. We have 5+ years of global community experience in the sector. And then we have the seed-funded projects which have produced some really interesting outcomes. Then we have the alliance institutions, individuals and collective knowledge of the previous SIs, the signature initiatives, which have now been merged. And then we have the members and individual institutional expertise, experience and knowledge. For example, there was a number of features or proposals, funding proposals developed by members of Eye on the Earth. That knowledge is very much a treasure that we can use as we go forward. And then there's collective memberships, multi-geography perspectives, multi-sectoral knowledge and experience. I mean, those who are on this call come from such a wide range of sectoral perspectives that it could be quite enriching to address the issue at hand. Alliance support. Alliance partners individual and collective capabilities to get our message on the agenda. They're all fairly powerful organizations in the field of environment and development, and they have the capacity to amplify our voice, and particularly at the international level, and the desire to host a future summit. So hopefully we'll have more regular summits at which everyone can get together and catch up and see what progress has been made. The tools, there are online communication platforms and online collaboration platforms. This particular platform that we are on right now is a collaboration platform. And then the collective belief and passion for Eye on the Earth principles, mission and value. We all subscribe to that. So these then are the resources: collective knowledge, alliance support, tools, and collective belief is what is going to drive the focal area. Here are the 3 projects that were funded. Mostly by the JT, of course, but some of these projects have picked up other funding as well. The Environmental Democracy Index, and you can look this up on environmentaldemocracyindex.org. It was done by the World Resources Institute with partners in the Access Initiative, and the index is basically an assessment of the 70 countries across the world against what are called the Bali Guidelines. The Bali Guidelines are a set of 26 guidelines which kind of unpack access to information, public participation, and access to justice adopted by the UNESCO Governing Council. And what the index does is it takes the Bali Guidelines and converts it to various indicators, both for law and practice, and assesses them against this benchmark. And you can go to this site and you can see the different rankings of countries, which countries do better on some areas and others. You can compare countries, etc. That is a neat little project which was funded by IGB. A second one was the UNEP UNITA capacity building in Principle 10 project, which was basically a training program for government government officials as well as civil society representatives. And as a result of that, there were workshops held in the Middle East, in the MENA region, in the Caribbean, and in Latin America. And further funding is now being sought from other donors to continue that program. Last but not least, Building Bridges program, which was, I've written it as the LAC Principle 10 Aarhus Exchange project. Basically, it's a project in which the Aarhus Convention, which by the way is the only regional convention so far, which institutes the rights of citizens to access to information, participation, and justice, available in the European region. The Aarhus Convention has had a lot of experience in this area, and as our partners in the Latin American region are now in the process of negotiating a similar convention or instrument, the idea was to see if there could be some cross-regional learning between those who are active in these areas. And indeed, the project managed to bring some Latin American partners over to the Aarhus Convention. There were a number of webinars held in which information was disseminated, discussed, and exchanged. And a fair amount of learning that went on as well. How do we organize ourselves? I think we can have plenary group meetings like this one, for example, where you will have a fairly wide diversity of knowledge within the community. And then you could also have specialist subgroups who are encouraged. And this is something we can decide on as we go along. There is also the idea of ensuring that we have both geographic, topical, and national development kind of national level focus. I mean, this is the way that we can divide ourselves up if we wish to. What are the expectations? Well, self-directed and coordinated. It's very much up to us to decide what we want to do. Declare establishment, scope, and purpose. It's up to us. Respond to the issues and identified in plenary, like this one. Time-bound or subject to renewal. It's obviously we don't need to decide for all time. We can decide that over the next 6 months, this is what we would do. We want to be as inclusive and as diverse as possible. The access to information or access for all special initiative. About 8 or 10 members with others joining in as and when. We hope that this focal area that has been established would be much wider. And then we would hope that there would be a written summary report back of plenaries periodically. Resources we've already dealt with, and then we'll have a few rules: support the mission and vision, compliant with the 14 principles, and focused on delivery of policy and programmatic messages and interventions at international fora. And now over to you. This is where I stop and open up the floor to discussion. How can the community, and these are some of the questions that I'd really like you to focus on for the remainder of the time. How can a community like this help you? How can the access to information focal area be of use to you? How can we as individuals help each other? How can we as a thematic and geographic subgroup help each other? And how can we be stronger collaborating as a collective? How can we leverage our resources? Each of us have various kinds of resources at hand. For example, we at WRI have the Environmental Democracy Index that can be leveraged. We also have a large network of civil society organizations across the world in 60 countries with 300 civil society organizations. How can we leverage that resource towards this end? And similarly, all of you would have such resources as well that you could leverage. Members, personal and institutional expertise. Each of you may be knowledgeable in this area. We'd like to see if you can use that information and expertise. Alliance partners, individual and collective capacities. Together, like we joined UNEP and UNITA, WRI, and did some of that work for capacity building. We could collaborate together. These are just some of the ways in which we can leverage resources. And then actions. What are the tasks that we'd like to perform? What are the resources we need to do that? How do we want to organize ourselves, and how do we do that next? So those are some of the questions. And I think it would be nice to hear first from all of you about how can this focal area be of assistance to you? Because I think that is the starting point. If it's not useful to you, then the focal area is going to die on its own. So it has to be useful to you, and I'd like to hear from you what you find would be useful from a focal area such as this. Over to you, Jesse.
Great. So thank you, Lalanath. So I think we wanted to open it up for questions. If you'd like to, there's most of you are controlling your mics. There's a few people who came in where I would need to unmute you. If you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, just post it through the question panel, and I will be sure to unmute you. But others can go ahead and chime in if you'd like with any questions or comments. So maybe if I would just like to prompt some response. We're at a bit of a transition here where we're going to be shifting from the special initiative, as Lalana talked about, to a focal area. We expect it to be a larger, more inclusive community that views the issue of access to environmental information from a range of perspectives. And we want it to be something where if you come to a monthly webinar or a phone call, that everyone's busy. We want you to be able to get a lot out of it. So what are some ways in which you think this community could be helpful for you?
Jesse, this is Bob. I don't mean to speak over the community, but I wanted to make 2 quick points just to add on to Lalanath's excellent presentation. One is that, particularly referencing the fact that Robert Gurney from the Belmont Forum is on the phone, the notion of access to information goes way beyond the sort of traditional access for all focus on legislative, statutory, governmental frameworks, and also includes data coming out of research and other resources. There will be some cross-pollination, if you will, with the data infrastructure group, and as Lalanath demonstrated with the slide that he showed, the discussions and input and feedback across the different groups in these various areas is designed to be more of a loop than just a straight line. So that's just one observation. The second is an invitation as you're sort of teasing out how Eye on Earth and this group could be helpful to the participants. One question I would add to that or ask in that context is, what are the issues in the sort of sustainable development, global discussions, and in all of their different forms, where the Eye on Earth Alliance partners in particular could be helpful in raising the visibility of those issues and trying to ensure that they are included in the debates and discussions and events and other kinds of opportunities. So what is it that the Eye on Earth community in the access to information arena would like to get in front of policymakers and get into these global decision-making apparatuses that perhaps as individual organizations they have not been or are not able to do on their own?
Yeah, this is Robert Gurney. Bob, as you gave me a nice introduction, I'd probably say something here. This is the initiative that I'm representing here is this group of 22 of the world's largest environmental science funders in many countries, including Brazil and South Africa, as well as the US and Japan and the UK and others. There were certain areas we really felt we needed to work together on, and we talked to people like UNITAR on training, because as the whole of cloud the cloud systems are changing the whole way in which environmental science is being done, is also going to change the access that everybody, and not just scientists, have to a wide range of sophisticated environmental information. You also need to have legal and security groups to make sure people don't do things they shouldn't be doing with the data, or trying to find out private information they shouldn't. And we need to make sure that everybody's policies around the world actually allow the data to be exchanged freely without all sorts of difficult shocks. Now, it seems to me, as an extension of what we're doing in a research domain into the more operational domain and government domain that Eye on Earth is doing, there's an incredibly good overlap between some of these headings, such as supporting distance learning through training through UNITAR or others, and things of that sort, so we can share expertise. Because there is very good expertise around the world, but no one group or country has all the good answers as to what to do. So we have these big changes taking place. If we want to take them to take place in an efficient way and a timely way, we need to work together. So anyway, I'm happy also to answer a question. I did give an Eye on Earth seminar a couple of months ago about this, and we have a website, the Belmont Forum e-Infrastructures CRA, but I'm very happy to participate in this, and I know many of my colleagues in the Belmont Forum are also happy to participate in this activity as well, because we see a good overlap. Thank you.
If I may, I'd love to chip in at this point. So I'm based in tropical Southeast Asia, and I see this as a region that is frequently almost forgotten, and it's often not part of the global dialogues. When you think of researchers engaging, they're often from specific parts of the region, and much of the region is left out of debates, left out of discussion. And yet, in terms of especially biodiversity protection, and even having a reasonable understanding of biodiversity patterns, it's a critical region that really needs to have a larger part of these dialogues and often better access to the information in terms of understanding even what the priorities are regionally. We lag behind other regions, and it would be fantastic to have a greater part of the global dialogue in terms of access to data, proficiency in data analysis, and also access to better levels of funding for greater amounts of collaborative research.
Okay, can I chip in now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hello? My name is Sonigitu for the records. I think following the two last speakers, I have a little concern. First, one biggest challenge we are facing down here in Africa is the issue of moving from the informal economy to formal economy. We have not been able to identify those challenges along the value chain. Thirdly, Africa cannot rise with a huge debt on it. Now, how can we enhance effective coordination among stakeholders to come up with a better form of dialogue of bringing out our citizens from the informal economy to formal economy to enable them even engage? Secondly, issue of data dissemination. How do we have a tool to enhance reliability of data we collect within the African region? Because this is a huge problem. We are unable to plan our infrastructure, we are unable to plan human development and utilization, and in fact, the way our environment is being degraded is as a result of lack of basic information around the potential uses that we could have benefited from. Let's take a case of the bioprospecting that occurs in Africa, and we do not share in the gains that come out of it. So how can we address this scenario? Thank you.
Thank you for posing some excellent questions there and bringing some really welcome perspective. So we need to. Is there anyone else who'd like to make an interjection or comment or question?
Sorry to jump in again. Something I meant to include earlier and didn't, that draws on one of the earlier points from one of the previous speakers. There was mention of the need for appropriate regulations and policies. Something I've seen in China and other parts of Southeast Asia is, in some cases, the policies exist and there isn't any enforcement. So something that would be also very useful to discuss is, do adequate policies exist, and where they do, are there other routes to ensure that there is a level of enforcement? Because, of course, it's essential to have the right policies, but those policies are only as good as their implementation, and I don't know how much access we have to actually getting them implemented, but having more discussion about routes to implementation, so it's not just a policy, but you actually outline how it then gets implemented, may be essential to actually seeing on-the-ground change. Especially with regards to things like sustainable development planning and the implementation of impact assessments around further developments.
Yes, if I can just sort of follow on from the last speaker and raise the issue of access to data that's held in the private sector. There was a seed-funded project through the Special Initiative on Biodiversity to try and mine biodiversity information from environmental impact assessments. And it's a regional workshop and held and hosted by the government of Oman and organized and coordinated by GBIF, the Global Forum for the Global Biodiversity Information Forum. And out of that workshop came some interesting insights into what the barriers are to making biodiversity information available to a much wider audience. And some of those issues were, for example, contractual type issues, some related to issues around ownership of data and confidentiality. So some of these things would really benefit from being these barriers being removed through some sort of intervention, probably through information and awareness and capacity building by regulators who are on the critical path for access to that kind of information. And regulators could potentially have the authority to make biodiversity information collected through what is essentially a private sector type process available to the public sector and make it open to the community. So I would welcome suggestions and ideas on how best to remove those barriers and improve access to data held in the private sector, particularly biodiversity type data. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, for that for that comment. I think it's really interesting to, from my perspective, to hear the issues that others are facing in terms of both the production, management, and accessibility and usability of different types of environmental data. And as far as the comment before around implementation, I think that's well taken from our perspective. We know, for instance, that environmental democracy rights, as we call them, the rights of citizens to access information, participate in decision-making, access justice, have a history of running up against barriers, both in terms of shifting bureaucratic culture and adopting new mandates and implementing those mandates that require new practices, but also because they challenge, the sort of the power structures around who gets to who shares information with whom and who gets to influence and make decisions. So some of that is gets to issues of power and political economy, but also organizational leadership, and all of these things need to really be well understood, and it's something I think that you have to assess at each country level because the situations can be different, although we have, I think, a general sense of some of the different ways in which implementation can go awry. So sorry, I just wanted to follow up with those. I thought very useful comments. Anyone else? And Simon, thanks for using that hand feature. That was actually helpful. If other folks who happen to be muted by me, meaning you have a red line across your microphone, and have a comment, I will be sure to unmute you.
I'm wondering whether we should move to the next question, which is how can we leverage our resources and what are the next actions we need to take. But before we do that, this is Lalanath. I just want to make some general comments on what I've heard so far. I think the previous speakers, I think they all had some really interesting suggestions. And they come from different perspectives and different geographies and have different emphasis. One way to do this, of course, we are documenting all of this, we're writing it all down, and we try to make sense of what might be the best way to try to address these needs and requirements that you have, spelled out either directly or underlying the comments you made. That said, I also have a concern that because we all come from different geographies and different sectors, etc., the subject matter, which is access to information, we need to try to keep that in focus. After all, it is a focal area, meaning we need to focus on access to information. So if we talk about biodiversity, the question is biodiversity information held by the government, and there's biodiversity information held by the private sector, there's biodiversity information held by academia, and then by civil society. How do we ensure that all of them work together and that this information is available to whoever needs it, but also in ways that don't jeopardize the very diversity that we're trying to protect? One clear way to do that is, of course, to have a general law which would establish the principles and guiding rules, set up the institutions, provide the funding, etc., to accomplish that end, or to have government policies which make that clear. But you can also have private agreements. You can have private in the private sector can have agreements amongst themselves as to how to do this. Academia can do that as well. There are different ways in which one can go about actually increasing access to information, quite apart from legislative and government policy making, which I think is important, but is not the only way to do it. So that's one comment I wanted to make. The other one I wanted to make is the fact that there is always an interesting and I think critical play between environmental information on the one side, so it could be biodiversity information, pollution information, production processes, whatever, on the one hand, or just even our understanding of natural phenomena such as climate change. That kind of information on the one hand and its accessibility by itself, even if you have the most accessible information of that kind, you may still not have rational, solid, good decision making. And that is because much of this decision making does not rely only on that environmental information. It is also a political economy question. What are the vested interests and how much power do they wield in the decision making process? Is there regulatory capture? These kinds of questions often swing the decision making process and sometimes thwart right decision making. But to what extent should those kinds of information about vested interests, etc., become public so that there will be some check and balance of it? Because that is the only way you can then open up decision making processes. So these are just some thoughts that I thought I'll put forward so that we broaden our thinking around sustainable development decision making. There is a tendency for us to think that sustainable development decision making requires mostly scientific information. Yes, it does, but there's also other information, economic, demographic, political, that goes into making of these decisions, and they are equally important, if not sometimes trump. In many cases, they do trump environmental information, however solid. Many are the examples of where we knew that there was terrible environmental phenomena going to happen, and nothing was done politically because of other reasons. So let's keep that in our mind. Perhaps we should move, and I know Jesse is documenting all of this, it's being recorded, and move to the next section of how can we leverage our resources? What can you contribute? What are you prepared to contribute? And what would you see as the next steps? I mean, Jesse has already proposed one next step, which is on a monthly basis to have a webinar with perhaps one or two resource people who would present on cutting-edge developments in this area, so that you would all benefit from knowing what's going on. That could be a real contribution to the sharing of knowledge. So that's already on the cards. I see he's proposed it. But is there anything else that you see could be useful?
This is Bob again. I just want to reiterate that one of the goals of this new structure for Eye on Earth is to take advantage in the most naked terms of whatever access, influence, visibility that the Alliance partners can contribute to Eye on Earth in terms of taking issues and potential solutions that a group like this might develop and working hard to find ways to bring them forward in the right kinds of venues. So I hope that's considered as a resource that's available to the community. We just need the content and some idea of potential targets to actually move forward.
Hello, this is Aldo. Can you hear me now? Can I speak?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, on the data issue, I've been working mostly around the Arctic for considerable time, and had the pleasure of sitting on quite many committees, as I said in my opening introduction, including the SAON meeting, SAON committee, sorry, Arctic Council Sustaining Arctic Observation Networks. And I think we all have the same mission. We want to make data available, but we're not moving forward, unfortunately. The reason behind that is mostly lack of funding. And when I say funding, it's bridge funding, it's connecting projects, because there's so many projects going on, and then they end, and there's no mechanism in place to bridge it over so that the efforts made within the projects are actually contributing to a holistic network. We've been working on some projects, including the Terrestrial Network of Permafrost, was funding through EU funding for 4 years. Consequence is a great database, that has nothing like it, and especially cited now as it's getting the Data Management of the Year award through ICSU. But the problem is there's no designated funding to actually continue it. And as you all know, half of the work is getting the people to work together, not just the data per se. So I'm wondering how we can deal with that to benefit all of us. You know, there's an Arctic ministerial meeting in the White House at the end of September. The main issue there is to deal with data. So maybe there will be something, but I'm just wondering, also in the context of the funding, how can we bridge from projects over to ongoing activities that actually benefit? Thank
you. Thank you, Haldor. Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering if Bob would like to respond or has thoughts around that question.
Hi, Bob. Oh, somehow you were muted. Go right ahead. Sorry, I'm not sure how that's happening.
Okay, here I am. I think that I think this is partly a question of bringing these issues to the right audiences, but in very concrete terms. The Alliance partners, the Eye on Earth itself, as we all know at this point, doesn't have the resources to fund activities and move ideas into operational operating mechanisms. But I think that this is where, with the right kind of content, we can work very hard to bring this forward in front of some of the right people in these global discussions. I mean, GEO has 103 government members. It may very well be that working through them, even if they're not necessarily in a position to directly fund a project, we can work with them to bring this into the agendas of some of these global discussions that are occurring later beyond that, and have the messaging right to try to encourage the governments and others to actually implement some of these concepts.
Hi, Simon, did you want to say something there? I see the hand.
Yes, please. Yeah, sure. Part of what I think we need to do as a community is become better acquainted with each other, each other's interests, each other's areas of expertise, their geographic position, and so forth. And I think the community in general seems to be a mix of active participants and sort of passive participants who are actively listening but not necessarily participating directly by attending webinars and so forth. So somehow to organize ourselves in a way that we can understand who else is in the community, I think will help to realize some of the tangible benefits of the sort that we've been talking about, but also some of the intangible benefits with respect to just what emerges when you have an expanded network, or even a network of networks, if you like, and that needs to become a little bit more visible. I must say that I'm only using my auditory channels at this stage. I don't know who else is online, for example. I don't know what their areas of expertise is, what their background is, where they're coming from, and therefore I can't easily tell where my interests and those of my network overlap with their interests and those of their network. And I think if that's clearer, I think we will see some emergent activity, and that I think will move towards some of the tangible and intangible benefits of networks in general and forming these kinds of communities. So that connectedness, that interconnectedness, I think is something we need to work on.
Hi, Simon. If I may comment on that, thanks for that input. And just a quick idea, and I'd be interested to hear what others think of this, that just occurred to me. So what I heard there was, how do we make everyone that is in these networks more visible? How do we get to know each other's work better? Know what opportunities may exist? There's different levels of engagement on these calls, and I'm just wondering if one idea to do would be to use a webinar to one of these monthly times to have just a volunteered set of members. We could maybe dedicate, this is just an idea, thinking out loud, but dedicate 30 minutes in a webinar to giving around, roughly 5 to 6 very brief presentations, 5 minutes, just on what are sort of the driving questions in your work. What are your areas of expertise or regions? What are maybe a few of the challenges or something, a few of the challenges you face, and then maybe like one interesting takeaway. These are, we could think of other questions. What are big opportunities, international opportunities that you're looking forward to? But just a few key things to sort of break the ice a little bit and help the community get to know each other better, and maybe we could accompany that with just one slide that sort of indicates your interests, your organization, key issues that you're focused or want to work on. Just something like that. I'd be interested to hear if that's something that others think would be helpful or not. And go ahead and feel free to jump in.
Okay, this is Salvador again.
Go ahead.
Just as a follow-up to what I was talking about earlier about the funding part and the discussion that followed in terms of marketing and making us visible. You know, this is probably the key thing, and the key to our success. Of course, getting to know each other is very important, but also getting the outside community to know us. You know, I recently, I was in Alaska recently, and I met Senator Lisa Murkowski, and I was making my complaint to her, like, why is it so difficult for policymakers to understand that we need bridge funding, we need further funding to be able to sustain our work, and it's not enough to give us project money. And she said to me, you know, Aldo, the reason why is because you, meaning the science community, you're not good enough at selling yourself. I've been thinking about that a lot, and unfortunately, I think she has a lot of truth to it. So that's something that we really should put our efforts to, and I totally agree. Making us or us knowing each other is also very, very important. If we could somehow, or if Eye on Earth could initiate some sort of a marketing activity, I think that would be extremely beneficial. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for that input, Haldor. I'll let Bob respond to the if Eye on Earth, you know, that's something that we could think about for an alliance activity. I will say also though that I want to be thinking about how we can already use maybe, you know, find potential opportunities between community members, either, you know, drawing from the fiches that were created last year. So, you know, I definitely, your point about funding definitely resonates here, and I do think that there's often an issue of recreating efforts that have already been, you know, where there's already something there instead of building on what already exists. But just to think about ways in which we can do that, maybe here, you know, through the focal areas more organically as well.
Yeah, Jesse, Bob. Yeah, I mean, actually, maybe comment very quickly on several things that you just said. First of all, in terms of the marketing part, you know, let's start with the content, and then let's figure out what we might be able to do with it, and then how we need to get that done. I think the alliance partners are certainly very open to that. That's, you know, a lot of the concept here is to get the ideas coming up from this focal area and the others, and then we try to figure out, working together, try to figure out how to move them forward. And the sort of salesmanship point is certainly well taken, and it's something that I've heard many, many times over the many years that I've been involved in trying to convert scientific concepts into policy and funding. You made the comment about not recreating the wheel, and you know, in my initial comments, one of the things that I tried to stress is Eye on Earth has, I think, a very unique perspective on some of these different kinds of issues. The types of organizations that are just around this call, much less a part of the broader community, that have some common interests, even if we don't already know exactly who's on the phone and exactly their individual agendas. There are already a lot of common interests in trying to tease out some issues, some policies, some programmatic prescriptions and procedures and potential solutions, etc., coming from this such a mixed set of organizations and perspectives, I think is going to make whatever it is that Eye on Earth tries to put forward that much stronger, and perhaps in many ways that much more credible. So, you know, we're here to work with the community to try to move things forward, but we need to look to the community for those, you know, unique perspectives. And Jesse, as you've mentioned a couple of times, and Lalanath mentioned in his presentation, there is this wealth of intellectual content through the fiches and through the seed-funded projects and through 5 years' worth of work. And I think the challenge is for this focal area and the other two focal areas is how do you tease through there or tease out of there, out of that wealth of resources, the essence of a couple of generally supported ideas that we can try to move forward in these various global contexts.
Thank you, Bob. Carl, I think you had a comment. Do you want to go ahead, Carl?
Yes, I like the idea about having webinars.
Hi, Carl. If you can speak any closer to the microphone, it's very difficult to hear you. You're very faint.
Sorry about that. Is this better?
No, actually, at least not for me. Why don't you go ahead and try, but you might want to type your comment as well in the chat box.
Yeah, it's too long to really comment.
That's a little better.
Well, my only comment was, I'll just make it simple, is that why don't we start with where we are and have a directory on the Eye on Earth website where those of us in the community are listed, and we have a short bio so we start to know who each other is. That'd be a great place to start, and have each of the Alliance members have a short paragraph about why they're part of Eye on Earth, what they think they can contribute, and their leadership that's involved directly in Eye on Earth. I mean, I think some of us know that, but having it in one place, simply understood, along with a quick access to the fiches, would be a really great start.
I think that's a great idea. Bob, can you give us a sense, perhaps? I know we keep looking to you for some of these comments. Can you give us a sense if that's something we could do?
What I would suggest, first of all, it certainly is a good idea. So what I would suggest is if you could, at least even regardless of how long it might take for you to put the report of this call together, if you could try to capture that, maybe working with Carl a little bit more to capture it in a paragraph or two, because the partners are actually having their next meeting on Thursday. And so I can bring this to them, or you can bring it to them. There is going to be a time during that meeting for the coordinators to report on their activities. So either way, but there certainly is a short-term opportunity to bring that forward and figure out how to get it done. One of the unfortunate challenges that we have is, we're very resource constrained, and so we don't have an awful lot of manpower on website management and things like that. But let's just get the idea out there, and then we can worry about how to actually get it done. But it is a very good idea.
If I could just add another thought to the mix on that. I think it's right that we need something online, and it needs to be passive rather than active. I'm not sure that a webinar is the right way to go, but I think if we have access to a website that has that, the information that we need on it. The other possibility is to use the social media channels, and it would be a simple exercise to form a LinkedIn grouping that people could then subscribe to, and that then automatically links to those of us who have a LinkedIn profile into information that is already prepared and is easily accessible. So that would be a quick, cheap, and probably fairly effective way of doing it, but perhaps some sort of survey of who's online or within the community who has a LinkedIn profile and what other platforms might be suitable would probably be a starting point for that. My second point is that essentially the way I'm seeing this community is really as a market. It's not just a market in the sense of a financial transaction, but there's a demand on one side and there's a supplier on the other side. So whether that's intellectual capital in its own right, so just a demand for intellectual capital of some sort, a problem to be solved, and resources that are freely available that have that intellectual capital that can solve the problem, or one that does require financial capital as well. So I think some sort of interface with the financing organizations, the grant-giving bodies and so on, and not necessarily just for access to finance, but access to their intellectual capital in the sense that they have a set of criteria, a set of constraints, a set of requirements, and the community that might be able to provide a solution doesn't necessarily know what the requirements are of the funding agencies. So some sort of structured interface between financial capital and intellectual capital, I think would be a great sort of early concept that we can develop a bit further. Thank you.
Hi, Jesse. In the interest of time, I think we have about 9 minutes left for the call. It may be good just to start listing some of the suggestions that have been made, so that we, as we leave the call, we will all carry with us the last memories of what we kind of thought as next steps. Clearly, there is the idea of a directory, creating a directory. There's the idea of a once-a-month webinar on cutting-edge developments in the field. And then other things that were suggested. Maybe you can list them out, 2 or 3 different things that were mentioned.
Yeah, well, we've had some different ideas, and I think that from the back and forth that we've had, the sense is that there's going to need to be to help this collaboration along. Like most collaborations, so need to be some joint fundraising efforts. So what are the stepping stones to getting there? Bob invited us to send to send the idea that that was made around an online directory. But I don't think we should. I think ideas like a LinkedIn group or some kind of shared Google form or something that low cost, not the ideal platform, but something that we could get going in the meantime is maybe a way to move forward on that. I think that there's certainly there's already been a lot of effort, I think, into generating different ideas around for fundraising, and I think perhaps to try to show how these different ideas, either coming from the FISH or ideas that you're working on currently in your own work, how they might be connected, and if there are opportunities for partnerships to joint fundraise, will probably be a priority. I'm still, from my end though, not clear on exactly the level of the interest level and for a monthly webinar, and what folks would like to use that time together, how they would like to, what they would like to get out of that. And I'd like to hear from as many people as possible. I know we've had 4 or 5 people speak up the most, but if there's any others who are on the call who'd like to speak as well, that'd be helpful. And I don't know if anyone can see, there should be a chat feature at the bottom if you have a sidebar to be able to use if you're having trouble with your microphone. And I can try to share things. Carl wrote that yeah. So just a note about the directory. And so I think that sounds like that's got that has a bit of a critical mass of support, so we can quickly access and know who each other are and what we're working on. So I think maybe just coming up, maybe a follow-up next step for that is just coming up with a short number of fields. Maybe that directory and the LinkedIn group don't need to be mutually exclusive. We could have both. I think that would kind of serve a LinkedIn group provides more of a chat function, I think, that you can share ideas more actively, whereas a directory is more like an information repository. So that, at least that's how I would see it. So we could come up with a few fields and try to put that together soon. Lona, if there are other ideas that you want to flag for follow-up?
Hi, this is Pat, and I just wanted to chime in on the, the monthly the monthly calls, and I think if we don't do the monthly calls, I think this group would lose some focus or lose momentum. And I think if we maybe combine, although I know it's always a struggle to figure out what would be a value in a monthly convening like that, but perhaps organizing a couple, say pick 3 or 4 of the members to do the quick lightning 7-minute presentation on one of their key projects or one of their key challenges, would start a conversation that could be followed up in a LinkedIn group, or at least it gets us together to also say, so who's going to what conferences? There are some major ones coming up, and if we want to use that as an opportunity to get this group together, if people happen to be there, that might be a way to keep the dialogue going and organize some focus on leveraging these other key events. Maybe a kind of a lower effort to keep us going and see what comes from those monthly conversations. Just a thought.
I think that's thank you, Pat. I think that you're on the right track as far as what are some things that we could immediately do, and it's good to hear that idea has support. So I think what we can do is to send out a form that folks can fill out, so we get a sense of where the overlapping priorities, and then we can send out a sign-up sheet to do something similar to what you suggested. Go ahead. I think someone was trying to talk.
I was just actually on that theme, and it's a question I thought I'd typed in the chat earlier. How many people here are going to the World Conservation Congress in Hawaii? Because that could be an interesting meeting point for a number of people who have common themes and are in on this call to actually start having a proper active dialogue, and that's something I think quite a number of us might be engaging with anyway.
Will anyone else be going to the World Conservation Congress? I take from that silence, I guess perhaps not, but Alice, right? It would be great if you wanted to afterwards, I'm not exactly sure when it is, but if you wanted to maybe give a report back to the community on anything relevant that you learned, I'm sure that would be welcome.
No problem at all. It's very early September, so about a month and a half away.
Okay.
Thanks.
So
yeah, Jesse, this is Bob. If we could keep that as an open topic, even by email. Actually, I'll work with the other coordinators to have this conversation going on across the other focal areas, because it would be good to try to get the Eye on Earth affiliated organizations that will be at the Congress to come together and have a face-to-face conversation, and we could help try to facilitate that from the coordinating unit administrative structure.
Thanks, Bob.
So Bob and others, just for your information, 2 other events that might be worth noting for the rest of this year. Firstly, of course, the UN General Assembly, which happens in September. There's likely to be some activity around SDGs, some activity around climate, etc. And it is, I believe, the last of Obama's years where he make a statement, and unofficially I know others are working to ensure that some good things are in that statement. Beyond the UNGA, in December, early December, there is being planned a big gathering in Paris under the aegis of the French government of the Open Government Partnership. The Open Government Partnership is an organization that is now 5 years old, started by President Obama and President Dilma of Brazil, and has now something like 60-odd governments who have joined. And basically they are governments that are committed to openness in open government, transparency, access to information, and citizen engagement in decision making across the board, not just in environment. This year's theme, interestingly, in Paris, is one of the big themes is around information, citizen engagement, and climate. So I think there's a special opportunity for us to be involved in that. Certainly WRI is involved in that. We're going to have a big gathering of the Access Initiative and others who are interested in climate and climate data at the same time, a couple of days before that meeting. So that's a real opportunity to bring the access to information focal point and its mandate to the forefront in through side events, through sessions, through etc. And certainly WRI will mention it when we can, whenever the opportunity arises, but getting some of our other members there would also be useful. And as information becomes available, I'm sure Jesse can share more of that with you as the plans begin to unfold.
Thank you, Leonov. So we are at we are just over half past the hour, and so I think we've reached the end of our time. So unless there are any other pressing comments, I would like to thank everyone for spending an hour and a half with us today and making excellent contributions. I think the follow-ups are to schedule the next webinar. We will post the recording of the webinar, probably on YouTube. That's the first thing that comes to mind, and making it available. And to send out a form for you to fill out with basic but useful information. Hopefully, let me know if you have any feedback, and we can make a simple, low-cost way to share information with the community for that. So yeah, if there's no other comments or questions, it's been great to talk with you all today, and we look forward to talking on the next webinar. Okay, well, great. I don't hear anyone, so I'm going to end the webinar. Take care, everyone. Please enjoy your weekends, and we'll be following up soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jesse. Great job. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Lana.
Welcome. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.